Yo, what's happening, guys? How you doing? Good to see your faces. Check it out. I'm back. So yes, I'm back after my week kind of break, if you want to call it. I super appreciate your guys' patience for anyone who stuck around. Had something really important and personal to take care of. It's actually not over. I do have to take a flight back home today. It's going to be a difficult couple of days ahead of me, but it is what it is. Life happens. I don't want it to hold back what I'm doing. I just needed a couple of days to get my head in the right space. It feels good to be back in front of the camera for you guys talking about some video games, and surprise, surprise, today we're talking about the Nintendo Switch. So the topic that I wanted to talk about today that inspired me to kind of suck it up and get back on camera for you guys and keep making some content and discussing all this awesome Nintendo stuff that's going on revolves around Capcom, a polarizing company, which is an adjective I use a lot, but it's actually really applicable to a lot of what's going on in the gaming industry nowadays. Capcom is a company that a lot of people have issues with. A lot of the issues I also share. They've done a couple of things the last couple of years that's really made me pretty frustrated. But as a whole, I actually love Capcom, you guys, and you can cry foul if you want. That's fine. You have at it. I like most of their franchises, even some of the ones that they don't really do anything with. And simply because I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, I have to appreciate Capcom for what they're doing. I love the HD remakes that they've re-released recently for the original Resident Evil, one of my all-time favorite games, also Resident Evil 0. They're doing it in Resident Evil 2. I appreciate what they've been trying to do with the Revelation stuff. And the fact that Resident Evil 7 is coming out soon has me massively excited. I also love the Monster Hunter franchise on the 3DS. Lots of good things. There's plenty of other things. I think Capcom is one of those companies that makes a lot of boneheaded mistakes like EA and Ubisoft, but I think that when they're really focused and trying to make good content, not to mention another company with great IPs and franchises, I feel like when they're at their very best, they're great. And so that's why I love them, and I don't really care if anyone else doesn't like them. But the reason I'm talking about them today was that I saw a GameSpot article posted a couple of days ago, and I'm going to link that article below. You should definitely read it and check it out. And it's interesting because there were some interviews with some Capcom folks, and basically what Capcom is saying is that they are very much looking into and considering bringing some of their multi-platform games to the Nintendo Switch. Now, the conversation's a little particular because we all might think, okay, well, we know Capcom's worked with Nintendo in the past. They consistently work with Nintendo on the 3DS with Monster Hunter and the like. And when Nintendo revealed the Switch and they released that infographic we've all talked about and I've been giddy over, that showed, like 150 third-party companies and developers who are officially on board, partnered with Nintendo to develop for the Switch, which is very exciting, Capcom was there. So it's like, okay, well, we already sort of have confirmation word from Nintendo that Capcom is working with Nintendo specifically on the Switch. Very exciting to me again because again I like Capcom, even if you may not. I do like Capcom, and so it's like, okay, well, isn't this really just confirming what we already know? And the way I see it, no, it's not already confirming what we already know. First, let me read you a couple of quotes real quick again directly from that article. There's a couple of other quotes there too, which is why I recommend you read it. But here's a couple of things, and then I'll tell you what I'm getting at. So the first quote I wanted to read from you guys, again, from someone. Can I find out who it is? I don't want to sit here reading this to try to find it out. So this is just a quote from Capcom. This person says, quote, "At Capcom, we determine which platform to release a title for after considering the features of both our software and the hardware in question, believing we must bring the enjoyment of our games to their maximum potential." Okay. Beyond that, the next quote, "It is excellent to have the market invigorated with new hardware launches." That's obviously always true, regardless of who's releasing it. "As a software publisher, we endeavor to develop games that offer enjoyment best suited to each piece of hardware's features and target users." Okay. Following first party, which is important when you're talking about Nintendo hardware. "Following first party in order to introduce our own content, we are currently moving forward with internal planning and analysis as a partner company." So that's, some of it's kind of corporate speak, some of it's fairly straightforward. What they're ultimately saying is they're always excited when new hardware comes out because as a software publisher, they see that as an opportunity, another platform to release their product on and hopefully reach more users, which means they're making more money, which is completely acceptable. All of these companies in the video game industry, even your favorite company, whoever they may be, the first thing they want to do before they please you as a gamer is make money. And it sucks to kind of realize that, but it's just the cold hard truth of it. And there's really nothing wrong with it. That's how business has been happening all over the world for centuries. That's just, money is money. So that's basically what they're saying there. And when it comes to new hardware, they have to consider, okay, what is this hardware going to do? What's the advantage to the users that makes them interested? What's the advantage to us as software publishers and developers? And is it going to be worth it and successful enough and interesting enough to people that it makes sense for us to spend the time and money and resources to make our games available on this platform? That's a whole roundabout kind of corporate speaky way to basically say those couple of simple ideas. And the reason that I think it's different than having Capcom confirmed as a developer on that Nintendo Switch list that Nintendo released is because initially when you see that, that doesn't necessarily speak about multi-platform games. That could be a variety of things. That just means that Capcom is interested in the Switch. Maybe they are developing something for it, considering that they're melding their handheld and home console kind of concept into this hybrid thing that is the Switch. It could mean that as of right now, or as of the time that was released when the Switch was shown, they were just making another Monster Hunter. A Monster Hunter that would have been a 3DS or a portable game like they've been doing this whole time. But all of a sudden, as we all know, and part of the excitement is the Switch, is that any franchise or game that's specifically made for the 3DS or for a portable going forward would all of a sudden also double as a home console experience. In a machine that's apparently very powerful. We don't know. There's many conversations, as even my last video discussed, as to where that power lies. But there's no doubt it's going to be vastly more powerful than the 3DS, more powerful than the PlayStation Vita, maybe as powerful as an Xbox One and PS4. So all of a sudden, all of these great franchises, i.e. Monster Hunter from Capcom, might all of a sudden be really awesome next-gen home console experiences as well. So Capcom's released on that infographic, that's what that could mean. Maybe just a couple of exclusive things or handheld-specific experiences they're going to continue to make on the Switch. Here they're basically saying, again, plenty of other information in this article talking specifically about the multi-platform stuff. Here they're starting to talk about games that are being released on other consoles, which is basically the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I don't know how much of Capcom stuff actually shows up on the PC. You guys can tell me if you know, but I can't think of much PC stuff. So now we're looking at all of these things, like I said, that Capcom releases on other consoles. Most immediately, in the near future, we all know, my baby, Resident Evil 7 is coming soon. So that's one of the first things that jumps to mind. Is Resident Evil 7 and any future third-party games, multi-platform from Capcom, now going to make it to the Nintendo Switch? They're basically saying that they're considering it and looking into it. Is it a confirmation? Almost, but also not really. Can we believe this? I think that it's definitely not a slam dunk. A lot of this stuff with the third-party situation obviously isn't a slam dunk, as we've seen evidenced by the way the Wii U played out. But, I tend to believe this. I think that there is some truth to this. I think that this is just sort of a third-party developer, a big third-party developer, kind of further elaborating on what Nintendo seems to be promising us and seems to have been saying with the reveal trailer and then that infographic, that they've worked very hard, hopefully harder than they did with the Wii U, because these promises definitely happened with the Wii U as well. But they feel a little bit more real this time around, or a little bit more solid, that Nintendo is promising to make stuff that's enticing to the third parties, that it's something that they can comfortably work on, make it easy for them to port whatever they might be making on the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, i.e. Resident Evil 7 from Capcom. And all of a sudden, it's not hard for them or expensive for them to bring these games to the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch has to be providing an appropriate level of power under the hood, whatever that has to mean for these developers, to make their games on par with what's going to be releasing on the competing platforms. And if that's true, then yes, I think Capcom would genuinely be considering and interested in releasing their multi-platform games also on the Nintendo Switch. I think that the key to that is the second point I made, that they're interested in it, because we want companies to be interested in developing for the Switch beyond just, it makes sense to, or Nintendo's asking us to, or it's just the thing to do. We want them to see a benefit. We want them to be motivated to say, hey, Nintendo's console is just as important as Sony's and Microsoft's. That audience matters. That audience wants these games. We want to make our games available on there, as opposed to just being kind of coaxed into it because it's the thing to do. I feel like maybe people can grasp this, maybe they can't. I feel like that genuine motivation speaks pretty loudly, and I think it can show if a company more cares about the audience that it's making games for, such as maybe Nintendo's audience on the Switch. We know that they're already into Sony and Microsoft's audience. That's where they make a lot of money. Those gamers, and I include myself as one of those gamers as well. I own and play on all three consoles. Gamers who like that stuff and play on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, they're happy to spend their money on that stuff. And Capcom wants to see the same thing, as well as every developer wants to see the same thing happen with Nintendo on the now upcoming Switch. Nintendo probably more than anyone wants to see that happen. And, I could almost evolve this into a different conversation about how important third parties are to Nintendo. I've had that conversation many times, even on a video fairly recently, so you might even be sick of me talking about it. I don't want to get into that aspect. I mean, the bottom line is I do think it's fairly important. Yes, Nintendo could survive without them, but it's a better scenario for Nintendo and for the industry if they can get third parties on board. It could only be a good thing in my opinion. And I want it. Even though I have access to a PlayStation Xbox, I want these games on my Nintendo console. So I don't want to devolve it any deeper than that into that conversation. I think it's just good to see that a company as big and sometimes successful as Capcom. We can't forget, of course, Street Fighter. That one just popped into my head. Maybe the next Street Fighter game becomes not console and PC exclusive and becomes available on everything. It'd be great to have something like a Street Fighter on Nintendo Switch. That's huge, you guys. So it's good to see a company as big and successful as Capcom considering the Switch for multi-platform games. I genuinely believe that when Capcom was shown on that infographic, it's about Monster Hunter. It's about what Capcom has been doing in the portable space with Nintendo and building that into the console space and moving that into the Nintendo Switch. And that is, in and of itself, a good thing. But the next step to that is the multi-platform stuff. We want to know, and I've said this so many times, that a third-party multi-platform game releasing on Nintendo's console is going to release, Ubisoft take note, day and date, as its competing counterparts. Unlike how the Watch Dogs things played out, we want to know that if Resident Evil 7 or the next Street Fighter comes to Nintendo Switch, it's coming out the same day as the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One version. That happened so infrequently in the Wii U era, in this last generation, and it's really unfortunate. There's many factors that led into that, of course, as we all know, but I think that Nintendo's worked very hard to mitigate that problem, and I think it's going to be much more successful with the Switch going forward. Capcom's words are good signs. Maybe none of this pans out. Maybe this doesn't become true. Maybe everything Capcom is saying is either blowing smoke or they believe it now, but something ends up stopping it down the road. Again, similar to the Wii U. And it would be a shame if that happened. It's not impossible for that to happen. So we, and that also means myself as a huge Capcom and Resident Evil fan, have to prepare ourselves for this not to pan out this way. But I think right out of the gate, Nintendo's got a lot of these companies roped in, willing to make stuff, already making stuff, wanting to make stuff, for the long term down the road. And I think Nintendo's worked to make that happen and comfortable for these companies. And I think that we can safely say, at least initially, it's going to work out. So that's what's going on. Pretty interesting stuff. I obviously like this story, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because I like Capcom, Resident Evil, and I want this stuff to play out. I'm so excited to purchase Resident Evil 7 and play it, you guys. I really feel like it's going to be the Resident Evil that I've been wanting for a long time, and a lot of us have. Even though I would have preferred not first person, I'm bought into the concept, and so I'm ready to accept it as that. And I'd love to have a reason to buy it on my Nintendo Switch. That's what I would like to play Resident Evil on. So Capcom and Nintendo, take note. That's what I want to do. I have a PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and a PC. And it is Nintendo Switch that I would prefer to play this huge next-gen AAA third-party game on. I mean, there are gamers like me out there. So this is why it's important for companies like Nintendo and Capcom to consider making this stuff happen. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think about this? Do you believe what Capcom is saying? Are you interested in it? Do you want it to come true? Do you hate Capcom and the third parties and you're just a Nintendo fan that wants nothing to do with that stuff? There are a lot of people like that out there, so whichever side of this discussion you fall on, please discuss it below. Thanks again for your patience, guys, as I come back here to making videos and content for you. And in another couple of days, I'll be back on, I think, a regular rotation. I missed the podcast this week, but I will be back on next week for good. And man, that's going to feel good because I've really missed doing that with those guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. So discuss Capcom and the Nintendo Switch below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. You are awesome. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.